Commander Alan Phillips stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, watching as the alien ship approached. After decades of searching the stars, humanity had finally made contact with an extraterrestrial species. The ship was massive, at least 3 times the size of the Valiant, with a strange crystalline structure that seemed to shimmer in the darkness of space. "They're hailing us, Commander," said Communications Officer Diane Watson. Alan took a deep breath. "Put them through." The screen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid creature with pale blue skin and large black eyes. It had no visible nose, just small slits, and its mouth was unnaturally wide. "Greetings, humans," the alien said in perfect English, surprising everyone on the bridge. "We are the Xorians. We come in peace." Dr. Megan Wright, the science officer, frowned slightly as she studied the alien. Something about its body language made her uneasy, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. The diplomatic mission continued for 3 days. The Xorians were polite, seemingly eager to establish relations with Earth. They shared limited information about their civilization, claiming to be traders who had observed humanity from afar for many years. "They're being very careful about what technology they show us," Megan told Alan privately in his quarters. "And have you noticed how they never answer direct questions about their homeworld?" Alan nodded. "I've noticed. But first contact is always going to be cautious. We're being just as careful with what we share." "There's something else," Megan continued. "Their facial expressions don't match their words. It's subtle, but when they talk about peace, there's a micro-expression that suggests, I don't know, anticipation, not happiness. You think they're lying. I think we should be careful." When the diplomatic team prepared to return to Earth, the Xorian leader presented Alan with a gift, a small metallic sphere about the size of a basketball. "A token of our friendship," the Xorian said. "A harmless art piece that changes colors based on ambient sound. Our children find them entertaining." The sphere was scanned thoroughly by the ship's security systems. It contained no recognizable power source, weapons, or communication devices. It seemed exactly as described, a harmless art object. Back on Earth, the news of first contact was met with excitement. The diplomatic team was welcomed as heroes, and the Xorian sphere was placed in a prominent position in the United Nations building as a symbol of new interstellar relations. Colonel Jack Bennett watched the celebration from his office at Earth Defense Force headquarters with growing concern. "You're not joining the party?" asked Major Lisa Howard as she entered his office. Jack shook his head. "Something doesn't add up. They found us, not the other way around. They speak our language perfectly, and they're surprisingly interested in our population centers and defense capabilities." Lisa sat down across from him. "You think it's a prelude to something else?" Throughout human history, whenever a technologically advanced civilization met a less advanced one, it rarely ended well for the latter. Jack pulled up a map showing where Xorian observers had requested to visit. Major cities, power plants, military installations. "They're mapping us, Lisa, strategically. The politicians won't want to hear that. Everyone's too excited about not being alone in the universe." Jack sighed. "I know. I've already been told to stop being paranoid by 3 different officials today." 3 months passed. Earth established regular communication with the Xorians, who promised to return for more extensive diplomatic relations. Scientists studied the sphere, which behaved exactly as described, changing colors in response to sounds in beautiful swirling patterns. No one noticed when, exactly 90 days after being placed in the UN building, microscopic seams appeared on the sphere's surface. No one was watching when, at precisely midnight, the sphere began to emit an undetectable signal that reached every Xorian ship waiting just beyond the solar system. And no one was prepared when thousands of Xorian warships suddenly appeared in Earth's orbit the next morning. The first missile launched from Earth exploded harmlessly against the shield of a Xorian ship, then another, and another. Nothing worked. Earth's most powerful weapons could not even scratch the alien vessels. Colonel Jack Bennett watched the radar screens in horror as thousands of smaller craft separated from the main ships and began descending toward major cities worldwide. "Our systems are failing," a technician shouted. "Communications, defense networks, power grids, everything's going down." Jack knew immediately. It's the sphere. It was never art. It was a Trojan horse. Major Lisa Howard ran into the command center, her face pale. "Sir, we've lost contact with the President and Joint Chiefs. The White House and Pentagon were hit first. We need to get to the backup facility," Jack said, gathering what portable equipment he could. "Rally everyone who can move. We're not beaten yet." Across the globe, the invasion unfolded with terrifying efficiency. In New York, the sphere in the UN building had expanded, releasing a cloud of microscopic nanobots that disabled all electronics within a 50-mile radius. Similar devices, secretly planted by Xorian observers during the 3 months of diplomacy, activated in every major city. Dr. Samantha Miller was working the night shift at the CDC when patients began flooding in. Their symptoms were unlike anything she had ever seen. Skin turning gray, blood vessels becoming visible through the skin like black webs, victims coughing up a thick, dark fluid. "It's airborne," Samantha told her colleague as they worked frantically to help the suffering people. "They must have released it from their ships." She looked out the window at the hospital parking lot, where a Xorian landing craft had touched down. Tall, blue-skinned aliens in what looked like battle armor emerged, carrying strange weapons. "They're not killing everyone," her colleague whispered as they ducked behind a desk. "They're selecting some people and taking them aboard their ships." "Harvesting," Samantha said, the horrible realization dawning on her. This wasn't just an invasion. They're farming us. Miles away, Lieutenant Eric Garcia and his Special Forces team watched from the cover of forest as a Xorian ship hovered over a small town. A beam of light shot down, and people began floating up into the ship, seemingly paralyzed but conscious, terror visible on their faces. "Those bastards," Eric muttered, gripping his rifle so hard his knuckles turned white. "They're taking them alive." "What do we do, Lieutenant?" asked one of his men. "Our weapons don't work against their armor." Eric continued watching, making mental notes of the aliens' movements and tactics. "We adapt. We find new weapons. We hit them where they're vulnerable. And if they don't have vulnerabilities?" Eric turned to his men, his eyes hard with determination. "Everything has a weakness. We just need to find it." By the end of the first day, Earth's organized military response had collapsed. Major cities worldwide were under Xorian control. Millions were dead, with millions more taken aboard the alien ships. In a secure underground bunker, Colonel Bennett gathered the highest-ranking survivors he could find. The room was filled with grim faces, military officers, scientists, engineers, and a few government officials who had escaped the initial attack. "They caught us with our pants down," Jack said bluntly. "They studied us, found our weaknesses, and struck precisely where it would hurt most. But they made one critical mistake." "What's that?" asked Major Howard. Jack's face was set in a cold, determined expression. "They left some of us alive." As night fell on the first day of the invasion, small groups of survivors began to gather. In forgotten bunkers, remote military bases, and hidden facilities designed for nuclear war, humanity started to plan its response. The Xorians had unleashed hell. They thought they had broken humanity's spirit. They were wrong. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of humanity showing what it could really do when pushed too far. 6 months after the invasion began, the ruins of Chicago stood silent under a gray sky. Most buildings were damaged or destroyed. Streets that once bustled with life were now empty except for occasional Xorian patrols. Kevin Daniels moved carefully through the shadows of a collapsed office building. Before the invasion, he had been a college professor teaching American history. Now he was the leader of one of Chicago's largest resistance cells. "Clear," he whispered into his radio. Behind him, Nicole Ross and Paul Martinez emerged from their hiding spots. Nicole had been a nurse before the invasion. Now she patched up wounded fighters and learned to handle weapons with equal skill. Paul had been a mechanic, his knowledge of machines proving invaluable as the Resistance modified old technology to fight the aliens. The Xorians are moving more people through this area, Nicole said, checking her makeshift scanner. Third time this week. Kevin nodded. They're taking them to that old hospital they converted. For what? Paul asked, though they all feared they knew the answer. We're going to find out, Kevin said, and we're going to stop it. That night, the three of them watched from a hidden position as Saurian guards led a group of captured humans into the hospital. The prisoners walked with blank expressions, like they were drugged or under some kind of control. We need to get inside, Kevin said. Find out what they're doing to our people. Paul pointed to a service entrance. I can disable their security there. It'll give us maybe 5 minutes before they notice. They moved silently, years of surviving in the occupied city having taught them patience and caution. Paul worked quickly on the security panel with tools he had made himself. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the hospital had been transformed. Strange equipment lined the walls. Tubes and wires connected to tanks filled with a glowing blue liquid, and floating in those tanks, unconscious but alive, were humans. Dear God, Nicole whispered, her hand covering her mouth. They're experimenting on them. Kevin took pictures with a small camera. The Resistance needed to know what was happening here. As they moved deeper into the facility, they found laboratories where Xorian scientists worked on samples of human tissue and blood. They're studying us, Paul said, looking at screens displaying human DNA. Learning how we work. A noise from the corridor sent them hiding behind equipment. A Xorian doctor walked past, reviewing data on a tablet-like device. Nicole, understanding a little of their language from intercepted communications, caught fragments of what the alien was saying into a recorder. Genetic compatibility, exceptional resilience, ideal subjects. When the alien left, Kevin signaled them to leave. They had seen enough. But as they reached the exit, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. We've been spotted, Paul said. Run. They burst through the door into the night, Xorian guards in pursuit. Energy weapons fired, scorching the walls around them. Paul fell with a cry of pain, a blast having grazed his leg. Kevin turned back, firing his salvaged human pistol at the aliens. It did little damage against their armor, but provided enough distraction for Nicole to help Paul up. They fled into the maze of ruined streets, using their knowledge of the city to lose their pursuers. Miles away, deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, another group of humans worked with grim determination. The underwater military facility, codenamed Deep Shield, had survived the initial attack, its existence unknown to the Xorians. Admiral William Turner studied the reports from resistance cells around the world. Each told the same story. The aliens were methodically studying humans, conducting experiments, harvesting people. They see us as lab rats, he said to Chief Engineer Olivia Chen, who was working on modified weapons. Then they've made a serious mistake, Olivia replied, looking up from her work. Lab rats don't fight back. She showed him her latest discovery, a frequency that disrupted Xorian technology. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a weakness they could exploit. Get this information to every resistance cell, Admiral Turner ordered. It's time we showed these aliens what humans are really capable of. Frank Morrison stood on a rooftop overlooking what remained of Seattle. Once a vibrant city of technology and innovation, it was now partly in ruins, with Xorian structures rising among the human buildings like strange metallic growths. His face, once friendly and open, had hardened into a permanent scowl over the past 8 months of occupation. They're moving another prisoner transport, said Angela Patel, handing him a pair of binoculars. Before the invasion, she had been an elementary school teacher. Now she was his second in command, responsible for some of the Resistance's most successful strikes against the aliens. Frank watched as the Xorian vehicle floated down the street, surrounded by guards. Inside were at least 20 humans, bound for the large facility the aliens had built where the Space Needle once stood. "We hit them at the tunnel," Frank said, his voice cold and decisive. "Set the charges where we discussed." Angela hesitated. "Frank, there's a risk to the prisoners if We've been through this," he cut her off. "Some casualties are unavoidable. But if we don't stop these transports, all those people end up as lab specimens anyway." Angela nodded reluctantly. The Frank she had known before the war would never have accepted civilian casualties as unavoidable. But that Frank was gone, replaced by a man who understood that sometimes survival required terrible choices. 2 hours later, the transport entered the tunnel. Frank gave the signal, and explosives ripped through the concrete above, bringing tons of debris down on the Xorian guards. In the chaos that followed, resistance fighters attacked from hidden positions, using weapons modified with the frequency disruption technology shared by Deep Shield. For once, the alien armor failed. For once, human weapons found their mark. The Xorians fell one by one, their blue blood staining the rubble. "Get the prisoners out," Angela shouted, firing at Xorian trying to call for backup. Most of the humans were rescued, but 3 had died in the initial explosion. Angela saw Frank looking at the bodies, his expression unreadable. "It had to be done," he said, though she hadn't asked. Miles away, in a captured Xorian research facility, Dr. Ryan Blackwood made a discovery that chilled him to the bone. He had been studying the aliens' research notes for months, trying to understand their interest in humans. Now, finally, he had the answer. "It's our genetic adaptability," he explained to the resistance leaders gathered around him. "Humans have an unusual ability to survive in different environments, to recover from injuries that would kill other species. The Xorians want to understand how we do this and incorporate it into their own genetic structure." Colonel Bennett, who had arrived to coordinate with this resistance cell, leaned over the translated notes. "So they're not just experimenting on us. They're trying to become us." "In a way," Ryan confirmed. "They see us as genetically superior in terms of adaptability. They want to harvest that trait." "Well," Jack said grimly, "they're about to get a first-hand demonstration of human adaptability." The next day, a rescue mission was launched to free humans from a nearby processing center. The resistance fighters, armed with the new disruptor weapons, fought with a ferocity that seemed to surprise the Xorians. Where before they had been cautious, now they charged forward, accepting injuries to reach their objectives. A Xorian commander watched in confusion as a human soldier, bleeding from a serious wound, continued fighting instead of retreating. When finally cornered, the human smiled through bloodied teeth and triggered explosives hidden on his body, taking out the commander and his guards. The surviving Xorians retreated, sending urgent messages to their leadership. The humans were changing tactics, becoming more aggressive, more willing to sacrifice themselves. The easy conquest they had expected was becoming something else entirely. Back at their base, the resistance leaders received word that similar attacks were happening worldwide. Humanity was fighting back with increasing skill and decreasing restraint. The Xorians had unleashed hell on Earth, but humans were responding with unexpected savagery. Admiral William Turner stood in the main laboratory of the Deep Shield facility, watching Dr. Samantha Miller work. The room was filled with equipment salvaged from research centers around the world, brought here by submarine crews that still patrolled Earth's oceans undetected by the Xorians. "Project Nemesis," Samantha said, pointing to the display showing a microscopic organism, a biological agent specifically designed to target Xorian physiology. Admiral Turner studied the screen. "Will it kill them?" "Yes," she replied simply. "It attacks their respiratory system. Death comes within hours of exposure." Turner nodded slowly. "And you're certain it won't affect humans?" "Positive. Their biology is fundamentally different from ours. This targets protein structures that only exist in Xorian cells." Samantha had changed in the years since the invasion. The doctor who once took an oath to do no harm now worked tirelessly to create the perfect weapon against the aliens who had destroyed her world. At night, she still saw the faces of patients she couldn't save during the initial attack, their skin turning gray as the Xorian bioweapon consumed them from within. "How soon can we deploy it?" Turner asked. "We need to test it first," Samantha answered. "We need a live subject." Admiral Turner pressed a button on his communicator. "Colonel Bennett, what's the status on Operation Capture?" Jack's voice came through clearly. "We've got one, sir. High-ranking, based on the markings on its armor. Being transported to you now." 3 days later, Xorian sat restrained in a secure room at Deep Shield. The alien was taller than the average human, with the characteristic blue skin and large black eyes of its species. It watched the humans with what seemed like curiosity rather than fear. "It calls itself the Ambassador," Major Lisa Howard explained as she and Colonel Bennett joined Admiral Turner to observe the prisoner through a one-way window. "It's been surprisingly willing to talk." Inside the room, Dr. Miller asked questions about Xorian biology, cleverly disguised as part of a standard medical examination. The alien answered freely, seemingly unaware of the true purpose behind the inquiry. "Why did you choose Earth?" Colonel Bennett asked when he entered the room. "Out of all the planets you could have invaded, why ours?" The Xorian tilted its head, the gesture unsettlingly human-like. "Your species was ideal. Advanced enough to have useful technology and infrastructure, but not advanced enough to pose a real threat. Your nuclear weapons were concerning, but we neutralize those easily." "But why humans specifically?" Bennett pressed. "Your reputation," the alien said simply. "Throughout the galaxy, humans are known as creators, builders. Peaceful. You make art, music. You explore. You rarely fight among yourselves compared to other species." Bennett couldn't help but laugh. A short, harsh sound. "We rarely fight among ourselves. You clearly didn't study our history very well." The Xorian seemed confused. "Your last global conflict ended over 80 of your years ago. Since then, only small, regional disputes. Most advanced species have continuous wars until they either destroy themselves or achieve unity." "So you thought we were weak," Bennett said. "Soft. We thought you were civilized," the alien corrected. "Manageable. Our data suggested you would surrender after the initial attack, that your will to fight would break when faced with superior technology." Bennett leaned closer, his voice dropping. "You should have looked deeper into our history. Humans have been killing each other in creative ways since we invented the first rock. We just got better at containing it, at channeling it. But it's always there, waiting for a reason to come out." The Xorian studied him for a long moment. "You are not what we expected." Bennett smiled, and there was nothing friendly in the expression. "You should have done your homework." Later, as the test of Project Nemesis was being prepared, Admiral Turner and Colonel Bennett watched from the observation room. "The ambassador said something interesting," Jack mentioned. "They think we're civilized. That peace means we're weak." Turner nodded grimly. "They're about to learn how wrong they are. Humanity didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being nice," Bennett added. "We did it by being the most ruthless, adaptable killers this planet ever produced. We just choose not to show that side most of the time." "Well," Admiral Turner said as Dr. Miller entered the alien's chamber wearing a protective suit, "the choice has been made for us now." 1 year after the invasion began, humanity was ready to strike back. Resistance cells across the globe received their orders through secure channels. Project Nemesis had been tested, perfected, and mass-produced. The biological weapon that targeted only Xorian physiology was now loaded into small, simple delivery devices that could be carried by a single person. Captain Laura Reed stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, a pre-invasion destroyer that had been hiding in a remote fjord in Norway. The ship had been modified with the electromagnetic disruption technology developed at Deep Shield. 6 other vessels like it waited nearby, crewed by naval personnel who had managed to escape the initial attack. "All ships report ready, Captain," her communications officer said. Laura nodded. "Signal the ground forces. Operation Payback begins in 30 minutes." Across what remained of Washington, D.C., Major Lisa Howard led her Special Forces team toward the massive Xorian command ship that hovered above the ruins of the Pentagon. Her soldiers carried the delivery devices for Project Nemesis, disguised as ordinary backpacks. Each person knew that this mission might be their last. "Remember," Lisa told her team as they prepared to move, "the disruptors will only affect their shields for 90 seconds. We have that long to get inside and release the Bioagent." Similar teams were positioned near Xorian ships in 20 major cities worldwide. The coordinated attack would begin simultaneously, maximizing confusion among the alien forces. At exactly noon Eastern Time, resistance fighters activated powerful electromagnetic pulse devices that had been positioned near key Xorian installations. The pulses, specifically tuned to the frequency Olivia Chen had discovered, disrupted the alien shields. "Now," Lisa shouted, and her team rushed forward. The Xorians, suddenly vulnerable, responded with energy weapons, cutting down several humans. But the rest pressed on, driven by a year of rage and loss. They fought their way into the ships, planting the delivery devices in ventilation systems before retreating. In orbit, Captain Reed's small fleet emerged from hiding and attacked the Xorian ships, whose shields had been temporarily disabled by the ground-based EMPs. The human vessels were smaller and less powerful, but they were crewed by people fighting for their home. "Target their propulsion systems," Laura ordered. "Don't let them retreat to the mothership." The battle in space was fierce but brief. Several human ships were lost, but not before they had inflicted serious damage on the Xorian fleet. For the first time since the invasion, alien vessels fell from the sky, crashing into empty areas outside of cities. On the ground, resistance fighters watched in amazement as Xorian ground troops began to falter. The aliens stumbled, clutching at their breathing apparatuses. Some collapsed where they stood. Project Nemesis was working, spreading through their ranks. In New York, Kevin Daniels and his team liberated a processing center, freeing hundreds of human captives. The Xorian guards were already affected by the bioweapon, unable to stop the sudden uprising. "What's happening to them?" Nicole asked as she watched a Xorian officer collapse, its blue skin turning a sickly gray. "They're getting a taste of their own medicine," Kevin replied, remembering the bioweapon the aliens had used in their initial attack. In Seattle, Frank Morrison's forces pushed deeper into Xorian territory than ever before. The aliens were retreating, falling back to their ships in a desperate attempt to escape the invisible killer now spreading through their ranks. "Don't let them regroup," Frank shouted to his fighters. "Keep pushing." By nightfall, the tide of battle had turned dramatically. The remaining Xorian ships in Earth's atmosphere were trying to escape, but Captain Reed's fleet, joined by other vessels that had remained hidden during the occupation, harried them relentlessly. From his command center at Deep Shield, Admiral Turner watched the reports coming in from around the world. Human casualties were high. They had expected that. But the Xorians were losing ground everywhere. "They're retreating to their mothership," Olivia Chen reported, looking at the radar display. "The smaller vessels are regrouping around it." Admiral Turner's expression was grim but satisfied. "They came to our world thinking we would break easily. Instead, they gave us a reason to show what humanity is truly capable of when pushed too far." He turned to Colonel Bennett. "Prepare the captured Xorian shuttles. Phase 2 begins now." The human fleet arrived in the Xorian home system after 3 weeks of travel through space. Their force was small compared to what the aliens could field, just 27 ships, a mix of retrofitted Earth vessels and captured Xorian craft. But they carried with them something the Xorians had never expected: humanity's full unleashed potential for warfare. Admiral William Turner stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching as the blue-green planet of the Xorians came into view. It was beautiful, not unlike Earth, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans. They're scrambling ships, Captain Laura Reed reported from her vessel. Hundreds of them. Their home defense fleet is much larger than what they sent to Earth. Admiral Turner nodded calmly. As expected, deploy the disruptors. The human fleet launched thousands of small drones, each carrying the electromagnetic disruption technology that Olivia Chen had refined during their journey. The drones spread out, forming a web around the approaching Xorian defense fleet. Disruptors active, Greg Summers announced. Their shields are fluctuating. The Xorian ships, suddenly vulnerable, slowed their approach. They had not expected this attack. The message broadcast from Earth had reached them, but they had not believed that humans could actually reach their homeworld. They're trying to adapt, Major Lisa Howard noted, watching the tactical display. Their ships are changing shield frequencies. Too late, Colonel Jack Bennett said with grim satisfaction. Launch Phase 2. From the human ships came another wave of drones, these carrying Project Nemesis. They slipped past the confused Xorian defenses, targeting military installations on the planet below rather than civilian areas. Dr. Samantha Miller had insisted on this distinction. They would disable the aliens' ability to make war, but they would not commit genocide. The battle in space was fierce but strangely one-sided. The Xorian ships, built for overwhelming force rather than adaptability, could not adjust quickly enough to the human tactics. The smaller human fleet darted between the larger alien vessels, causing them to fire upon each other in confusion. Their command structure is breaking down, Laura reported. They've never faced an enemy that reached their homeworld. On the planet below, the effects of Project Nemesis spread through military bases and shipyards, not killing all Xorians, but incapacitating their armed forces. The civilian population, watching through their equivalent of news broadcasts, saw human ships defeating their supposedly invincible fleet. After 6 hours of battle, a transmission came from the planet. The Xorian civilian government, now cut off from their military leadership, requested to speak with the human commander. Admiral Turner accepted the call. On the screen appeared an older Xorian, its blue skin paler than those they had fought on Earth. "We surrender," the alien said simply. "We ask only that you spare our civilian population." Turner looked at the alien coldly. "When you came to our world, did you offer the same mercy? Did you spare our civilians from your bioweapons? From being harvested for experiments?" The Xorian lowered its large eyes. "We did not. We believed your species was weak. We were wrong." "Yes, you were," Turner replied. "But here is the difference between us. We could destroy your entire civilization right now. We have that power. And we are choosing not to use it." The alien looked up in surprise. "Why would you show mercy when we showed none?" "Because the difference between us is that we could have destroyed you completely and chose not to. Remember that the next time your kind considers unleashing hell." In the days that followed, the terms of surrender were negotiated. The Xorians would dismantle their military, return all human captives, and provide reparations to help rebuild Earth. They would also share their technology, particularly their medical advances that could help heal the damage they had caused. As the human fleet prepared to return home, news of their victory spread throughout the galaxy. Other alien civilizations, some who had been watching Earth for centuries, reassessed their understanding of humans. They had observed humanity's art, music, and seemingly peaceful development. Now they saw another side. When threatened, these same creators became the most formidable warriors imaginable. A transmission, intercepted by one of Greg's communication devices, passed between two distant alien worlds. The humans appear peaceful until threatened, then they become the most terrifying species in the known universe. Remember this, and do not provoke them. The human fleet arrived in the Xorian home system after 3 weeks of travel through space. Their force was small compared to what the aliens could field, just 27 ships, a mix of retrofitted Earth vessels, and captured Xorian craft. But they carried with them something the Xorians had never expected: humanity's full unleashed potential for warfare. Admiral William Turner stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching as the blue-green planet of the Xorians came into view. It was beautiful, not unlike Earth, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans. Their scrambling ships, Captain Laura Reed reported from her vessel. Hundreds of them. Their home defense fleet is much larger than what they sent to Earth. Admiral Turner nodded calmly. As expected, deploy the disruptors. The human fleet launched thousands of small drones, each carrying the electromagnetic disruption technology that Olivia Chen had refined during their journey. The drones spread out, forming a web around the approaching Xorian defense fleet. Disruptors active, Greg Summers announced. Their shields are fluctuating. The Xorian ships, suddenly vulnerable, slowed their approach. They had not expected this attack. The message broadcast from Earth had reached them, but they had not believed that humans could actually reach their homeworld. They're trying to adapt, Major Lisa Howard noted, watching the tactical display. Their ships are changing shield frequencies. Too late, Colonel Jack Bennett said with grim satisfaction. Launch Phase 2. From the human ships came another wave of drones, these carrying Project Nemesis. They slipped past the confused Xorian defenses, targeting military installations on the planet below rather than civilian areas. Dr. Samantha Miller had insisted on this distinction. They would disable the aliens' ability to make war, but they would not commit genocide. The battle in space was fierce but strangely one-sided. The Xorian ships, built for overwhelming force rather than adaptability, could not adjust quickly enough to the human tactics. The smaller human fleet darted between the larger alien vessels, causing them to fire upon each other in confusion. Their command structure is breaking down, Laura reported. They've never faced an enemy that reached their homeworld. On the planet below, the effects of Project Nemesis spread through military bases and shipyards, not killing all Xorians, but incapacitating their armed forces. The civilian population, watching through their equivalent of news broadcasts, saw human ships defeating their supposedly invincible fleet. After 6 hours of battle, a transmission came from the planet. The Xorian civilian government, now cut off from their military leadership, requested to speak with the human commander. Admiral Turner accepted the call. On the screen appeared an older Xorian, its blue skin paler than those they had fought on Earth. "We surrender," the alien said simply. "We ask only that you spare our civilian population." Turner looked at the alien coldly. "When you came to our world, did you offer the same mercy? Did you spare our civilians from your bioweapons, from being harvested for experiments?" The Xorian lowered its large eyes. "We did not. We believed your species was weak. We were wrong." "Yes, you were," Turner replied. "But here is the difference between us. We could destroy your entire civilization right now. We have that power. And we are choosing not to use it." The alien looked up in surprise. "Why would you show mercy when we showed none?" "Because the difference between us is that we could have destroyed you completely and chose not to. Remember that the next time your kind considers unleashing hell." In the days that followed, the terms of surrender were negotiated. The Xorians would dismantle their military, return all human captives, and provide reparations to help rebuild Earth. They would also share their technology, particularly their medical advances that could help heal the damage they had caused. As the human fleet prepared to return home, news of their victory spread throughout the galaxy. Other alien civilizations, some who had been watching Earth for centuries, reassessed their understanding of humans. They had observed humanity's art, music, and seemingly peaceful development. Now they saw another side. When threatened, these same creators became the most formidable warriors imaginable. A transmission, intercepted by one of Greg's communication devices, passed between two distant alien worlds. The humans appear peaceful until threatened, then they become the most terrifying species in the known universe. Remember this, and do not provoke them.